Hi folks. Welcome. Welcome to today's episode of RPG Clinic's Clinic Hours, in which we talk about tabletop role-playing games. Tabletop role-playing games? New channel, who dis? Alright, let's get back to our usual tracks. So different mic, different webcam. If there are any technical details, do let me know in chat so that we can get that all settled before we get going. Hype train. Y'all are too good to us. Much love. Choo choo. It's nice to see you all. It's really nice. Lots of familiar faces from Disconcordia, which is a lot of what's going on today, is what I'm going to be talking about, because this is really the first time that I'm doing any actual amount of STing. Before now, I'll start with the beginning. I started playing online role-playing in forums. Text chat, very loose, no real rules. Hoot hoot. And then, thank you. We, my first, tabletop role-playing experience for any sort of system was through Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. I played a lot of it. I learned a lot of it. Thank you for gifting subs. And that was sort of my introduction to tabletop role-playing, with a set of rules, with dice, sitting around a table with some people. And it was after a few years of playing that I finally got up the nerve to try to run a campaign. I had a nice idea, I had some friends, we all sat down, we ran 2 sessions, and then it kind of fizzled. I'm pretty sure that was mostly me not having the confidence in my own game running, but I think there might have also been some schedules, and there were 3 other games per week for us at that point in our lives, because we were in college and we had nothing better to do with our time. My other sort of STing in that era was that we would have this sort of coliseum, in that if you had some time between classes, you could come into the gamer club, draw up a fifth level character, we'd throw you into a fight, and we'd roll some dice. Not heavy into the storytelling. It was a lot more, okay, whatever, we've got some time, we're bored, let's roll some dice and see what happens. And then I didn't really foray into any sort of game running, storytelling, etc. until a year ago, when we started doing our one-shots. And even then, that's oh look, I found this one-page, game that's going to be really silly, and I'll make sure that we're following the rules that are on this one page that's printed out for us. So when John had the idea to have a persistent roleplay server on Discord, it sounded great. It was Changeling, which we had played 136 episodes of. Boop. It was a system thus that I was quite comfortable with and familiar with. It was C20, and initially I was like, okay, well, I'm going to figure out the whole crunch part of it, the dice rolling mechanics, the bot side of it, facilitate it, because that's really where my skill set is, broadly speaking, is just facilitating. That's what stage management is. It's sort of getting ducks in a row and letting other people do their stuff. But we were going to all be part of the ST team, collaboratively working on it. I can do that. Let me know if that's good or too low, and I can also crank myself a little if that would be preferable. Great, thank you. So, as all of us being part of the ST team, we were going to all have NPCs, and be sort of checking in with each other about the general plot points and story, in which direction we wanted things to go, pooling our ideas about thoughts for house ruling, etc., based on our collective experience with this previous campaign. But what I didn't think would happen would be what has happened. Thank you, Requiem. And that is that I've gone beyond playing, like, you know, the bartender was the first character that I made, who was just gonna sit there and listen to your problems and say some nice stuff. Well, first couple of weeks, people didn't want to sit at the bar. They wanted to be in another room. They wanted to be, like, playing with the dumbwaiter that got all the orders wrong. And that was fine. That was totally fine. But it meant that I had to roll up some other characters. And that is sort of what started rolling me into... Thank you for the hype train, folks. Foot. Was starting to cater to the needs of the players. Switching from me having been a player for so long, figuring out, I want to do this, I want to have this experience, and instead respond to what the player base seemed to be wanting or needing. And that's what really brought up the character that I'm playing the most at this point, which is Dycentra, who is a Slua. She, like, creeped through the walls, listen in on conversations, and only appear when someone was alone. And she was there to talk to people who were alone. And so it was a shift for me to find those needs for a group. I mean, it's very different with a collective roleplay experience, but it's still that shift in, you know, oh, well, I'll play patches and I'm a total badass. I'm going to shoot shit. I'm going to walk in here like I own the place and flip people off and, you know, all the things the players do that makes them cool, and it makes them the heroes and it makes them the protagonists. So that's sort of, I guess, like the first lesson for me was just that shift in what you do, what characters you play. Because I know John has talked often about the types of characters, or players, you know, the person who wants to just beat them up, the person who's just there to be with their friends, the person who's the tactician, and I'm much more focused on characters themselves. So to me, I guess that's the lens through which my first realization of what this shift means. But it also... You're also... There are also a lot of other shifts and considerations. Who was it? Avatar of Cain said, you know, brought up the first combat, and that's the thing, is that I initially figured, okay, John will run most of, like, the crunchy stuff, the combat, right? He's been doing it for years, but the way things worked, he was in the middle of, like, 2 other scenes as 2 NPCs, and I was just there, and I was like, you know what? I've got the book open on PDF on my computer, like, I can do this, we're all gonna learn together. Okay, initiative. Let's figure that out. And it was just, you know, going through it and figuring it out as we went along and sort of collectively, you know, refreshing on the rules, figuring out the flow and working through it together. And just going through that process like you would at your first combat in any tabletop game, right? Unless you've been playing the system for years and years and years and you know it back and forth. That first combat, you know, especially with a new character, new abilities, things like that, you've got to work through it. You've got to work through it, figure out what your character's good at, what they're not so good at. You know, we had in the beginning of Changeling, Braum was like, I'm made out of stone. I'm a troll. I've got extra health levels. I can soak bullets. Oh god, I'm almost dead. Like, we all have those realizations when we're new to a system, new to a game, and just being willing to work through that collectively with players and be like, okay, give me 2 seconds, I'm going to go look this up. That was sort of a learning experience, particularly shifting from streamed games where we don't want to let things sit and drop and wait while we're flipping through the book. Like, that's dead air. That's death for television, and especially for podcasts, because we don't edit our content. We don't have the time to do that. We have jobs. But thus, we're very, very conscious of not just letting the game drop. Whereas here, it's also similar because it's 24/7. It's completely live. Everyone's active. You're aware that people might only have like 2 hours between like work and dinner to sit down and play this game. You don't want to leave them sitting there for 10 minutes while you go look up the rules. But it's that process of working through it and learning that you just need to be open. Okay, we're looking this up. We're figuring it out. I really can't find the paragraph wherever that is. Today, this is the rule. We'll talk about it after, and if we realize it was wrong, we'll move forward. A lot of STing for me is also, it's a different type of thinking on your toes. It's not, oh, what cool shit could I do, or how do I solve this puzzle? It's, how do I keep the game rolling and moving forward? And that comes a lot from, just making a call in the moment and knowing that you can get it right next time. Written as wrote, they go on sale often. Next time we see that it's on sale, we'll probably post it in our usual Discord. But the PDF, I think, $20. It's not super bad, and PDFs are nice because you can search them. You can go Control F, soothsay. Okay, how do I use my art? Thank you, Requiem. That's another thing, is that there's a shift in from tabletop to mass constant game. That they're constantly in a freehold. That makes certain things more or less powerful. So having to make those decisions and figuring out how to phrase those and communicate them to players as well is important. You don't want them to feel like you're arbitrarily just being like, no, your special ability isn't as cool anymore because reasons, or because I don't like it, or you like, I can't kill you as easily, so I want to kill you more. Like, it's figuring out how to communicate those design choices to people. Like, oh, well, if you can just heal everything instantaneously, getting hurt doesn't matter anymore. Okay, how can we work through this to find a place where it has dramatic effect but isn't completely broken or useless? So a big part of it, which is sort of our motto overall, is use your word hole. Communicate with people, talk through things, try to let them understand where you're coming from so that you can continue that conversation, move yourself to a situation where everyone at the table is having fun. On the subject of everyone at the table having fun, one of the other wonderful things that we have had is our safety tools. That is something that I want everyone in the world to have access to. They are so useful, and when we first added the play card, the green card, it was sort of we have a pause and a stop, so I guess we should also have a play, but whatever. And it's just the most useful thing in the world. You're like, oh, well, I reach out to touch you on the shoulder, and there's a lot of discussion of I will attempt to, and then people say yes, but it's also something that you can just flash a green card and you're like, great, touch you on the shoulder, keep going. You don't have to stop. You don't have a conversation about it. Both people give a thumbs up. You keep going. And it also means that when folks do something that perhaps catches you off guard, even I had something that I didn't really realize was the line until it came up, and then I was like, oh no, I'm not good with this. So pause card, boop, peace, change scene, change situation, state safety requests. People talk through it. People are awesome, super respectful about it. But it facilitates that conversation because people always know that they have that freedom. And it also allows people to push boundaries, to explore, to see things, because they know that they can always quickly check in. And everyone is aware of that always constant communication through the use of just flashing little green cards, thumbs up, good to keep going. Yep. Okay, wait. Not this way, that way? Great. Okay. Yep. So really, whether you use our safety tools, which I know we've said we want to make them available for full-on print on demand or ordering or any of that, something that we do want to definitely finally get to. But like, please just like find some colored paper or use the X card or thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down, whatever works for you. But it's useful. It's really useful. So if folks have questions, broadly speaking, about starting to ST, please throw them into chat. Otherwise, I'm going to kind of go a little chronologically, starting with the prep for the game. Green card. Yeah. So having to think about the meta plot, make those decisions. There are decisions you make as a player that's like, oh yeah, I think it would be cool to be based in a city. And I think it would be cool if we had lots of magic in this game. And I think it would be cool if my character, used a sniper rifle. Like, these are decisions that you're used to making when you're getting ready to participate in a game. Depending on how open to discussion your storyteller is, sometimes you can really help guide it to the point where, you sit down at the table and you're like, I want us to be set in the future in, 2038 and, the sky has fallen. And everyone's like, yeah, that's great. Or sometimes, someone comes up, they're like, cool, I'm playing this game set in this system. Here's the story. Yes or no. But being the person making those decisions and starting with what we wanted to present, and particularly since this was a mass game, so we kind of just had to make our decisions and put them in, like, because having 50 people come at you is a bit much. It was interesting having that input and that creative freedom and the ability to make broad choices about the world that would affect the whole game. Choices about what the political situation is. We made the choice that the pandemic doesn't exist in our game, which was something we had decided previously. There was one other thing. Oh, well, the setting for our story, which is near and dear to my heart. We chose a place that was real, but that is currently actually slated for demolition. And in our storyline, like, that's not going to happen. It was a threat. It was the first big story arc of our story. But ultimately, our big meta plot plan here, I know I'm, like, showing our hand, but it wasn't, you don't press the right buttons, you don't check the right boxes, the end. Goodbye, server. Like, meh. I'm happy to switch off to that while you're here, Gilligan. We've got a question. Boop. Throw it up on deck. Question's a bit off topic. How does it feel turning a former PC into an NPC? How do I manage that transition with someone you played for a long time? It's something that we've discussed personally, particularly Liz and I. Is how fun it is to do so. I've always wanted to swear more and more effectively and more cleverly as Patches, and being able to sit down and, like, think about what I write has been great, but that's the shift to text, less than shift to NPC. As far as shifting to NPC, it's interesting because she's got this godlike sheen. Part of that is because she's got 136 episodes of badassery behind her, so she's like a higher level than the other PCs. But it gives a completely different perspective. You have all these different outside perspectives on who this person is. And you also, it is that shift that I was talking about before, that you shift from what would my character do because they're a badass, or like, how does my character solve the problem, to how does my character facilitate solving the problem. And that particularly is difficult as Patches because she's a knocker, she builds shit, she's a get shit done kind of person, and a lot of the problems that were going on at the beginning of our story were, oh, there's this building that's falling apart. But thankfully there were meta plot reasons for her not to just show up or facilitate the problem. Yes. But thankfully, there were plenty of plot reasons for her not to just show up and do it. But ultimately, it was giving people space, inviting them to come to her, And then ultimately at a certain point being like, cool, enough people have sort of brought it up. She's going to show up and she's going to fill the gaps that they haven't been able to fill. And so that's like, I sympathize with my PC's frustration, my former PC's frustration by now having to let, like, not being able to interfere, but that's also the situation that the character is actually in. That also means I just can't accumulate dozens and dozens of sex P as my character because she's, you know, off behind the scenes instead of sleeping with the characters. What? That's a subject that I will get to, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is just that shift of being able to be like proactive and solving problems and doing shit to like standing back facilitating. Yeah, well, that was kind of wonderful how it happened, and I felt like that was largely through PC choice and decision and like setup. Is that there was her like, she was invited to be there, she was requested to be there, so she had a reason to, but she wasn't making decisions. She was on comms. She was like, "I have the shot." Blake was like, hold your fire." She held her fire. She was taking orders from a PC. It was a way for her to be herself, do her thing. And it was only once we as storytellers needed to handle a player situation that, like, Brom and Patches, the NPCs stepped in and did something. Because at that point, it needed to be handled by the STs. So that was the time when they, like, took action and did things and solved things. So it was definitely a shift, but it was nice. It was nice that it's nice that it's able to work in the context of our game. There may be times in the future where I find it a little more difficult, but maybe not. It's been fun. You know, it's also just nice that I get to play her again. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything more particularly on that before I go back to prep and session zeros. But that was another decision, was that we were going to allow our former PCs to be NPCs in the story, but that they were sort of each in their own place. We set up their separate freeholds, which are like home bases, if anyone here isn't familiar with Changeling. So each of them had their own home base that was separate from the main location of our story, which meant that people could come to them, but they kind of they're there to be approached. It's, you know, going to the wizard to get the quest and the scroll to go off and save the day, rather than the wizard just showing up and being like, "You do this." Yeah. And sometimes we absolutely do just like shove rather than nudge. And some of that, sometimes it's just because as storytellers we're like, no, this needs to happen this way or another. So you just push when you need to. Sometimes we push a bit sooner than we should. But it's definitely, you know, it's still a learning exercise. It's still figuring out those details. But it's been fun. Yeah. And I figure I'll keep learning, keep getting better, hopefully. Not worse. Put on my robe and wizard hat. Yep. So our prep, we talked about the meta plot, the choices we were making about our world, what we got to include, what our setting was, what our first sort of ideas were for where the beginning of the plot was going, what's going to be like day one obvious, what's going to become obvious in the first week, what's hanging over them, what's working in the background now, something that might come up in a month or a year or maybe never. So that was fun to talk through and plan out, and to be able to make those meta decisions for a story rather than just being someone who's in it and somewhat reacting, as much as I'm thankfully haven't worked with GMs or STs that railroad. There's still you're a little bit more reactive as a player, when it comes to the plot. As much as a player, you can be like, I really want to do more, crafting. And then, the game master or storyteller can help make sure that happens. And thus it's player agency. But it's not the same as, okay, there's this really cool workshop and I'm going to have an NPC come in and tell everyone to go over there. So that sort of, that shift in agency is interesting. Going into our session zeros, which were sort of our character creation, we had the player's guide, which had a lot of information, gave folks a good sense of what to expect. John has basically run all of the character creations, so I can't talk too much about that from personal perspective, but I get to see it all. We check for lines and veils. We talk through anything that seems a bit too broad or, just to make sure that we understand what they mean and whether or not we're worried it will come up. Because if someone's like, I hate when anyone gets in an argument, unfortunately, this is a social game. It's going to happen. And if that upsets you, then, I'm really sorry, but this is not the game for you because it will just keep upsetting you, and that's not healthy for you, and that's not healthy for anyone else. So, yeah. So those are kind of the discussions that you have in a session zero, which I'm used to having from my perspective, right? Like, what do I need from the game rather than what do the others need, as much as, of course, I'm listening during a session zero. Well, that's exactly it. I find the arguments dramatic, but some people might not, right? There's a question. Wrong thing, rather. Other things I find are exciting to find in a character build. Yes. We have folks, build their character, put their dots, and then on the back page they have a short character description. I think the box for your backstory is maximum 300 characters or something. And I just find it interesting when someone has made a choice that doesn't feel completely standard. I'm a Selkie who loves the sea. Okay. I am an Aku who wants to craft the coolest gizmo. Okay. But, I've got, it's also, because this is a mass game, there are plot lines that are great when it's a small tabletop game of oh yeah, I have these long lost parents and this person killed them and I'm trying to find the murderer and it's my life's quest. That's kind of a great plot hook for a small tabletop game. But when we're in a mass game, we can't have everyone's, personal vendetta tied in when there's 20, 25 other people with stories going on. So it's when there's something that is interesting that feels like it'll work in the mass game, that there's an aspect to the character. There's because we have a little box that's quirks, which is also from the official character sheet. And it's those little details and smatterings that stand out that I find exciting. Because again, I'm role play focused, I'm story focused. I can be a bit of a tactician when I get down to it, but I'm very excited by the character interactions, and that aspect of it. So that to me is what hooks me. And sometimes when there's an interesting, a she who's actually not good at socials or a slua who is, those kind of details are fun. They're little oh, this is what makes you and your character unique. As far as figuring out where dots go and whether or not that's a good idea, I'm kind of used to going through that from my days of, sitting around tables with D&D players. It's a bit different when you're worried about the social aspect of the game, but it's still sort of familiar. And, most of the time with most players, it's just oops, you shortchanged yourself by 2 points, or, oh, this costs this and this costs that, so you've overspent, maybe shift your dots around. Trying to power balance things like treasures and chimera and things that are quite powerful. You want to make sure people have fun, have the idea they want, but also don't walk in and instantly break the game. So that's part of it. It's thinking about those things like, oh, this is cool, but it's going to break the game. How do I let it still be cool, but not break the game? So it's like, oh yeah, I want to have this super ultra sniper rifle. Okay, well, maybe what if it kind of is broken at the moment and over the course of the game it'll get better? Because that's sort of what happened with Patch's rifle and Changeling the Streaming, is that it was a 1-dot treasure for the baiting, but throughout the course of the storyline, she unlocked more tiers to the weapon, so it went from a 1-dot to a 5-dot. Spark is scary, Patches is there. So it's figuring out ways to temper people's ideas in a way that lets them be excited, lets them have their dreams, while still actually caring about, worrying about what it'll mean as far as the game balance, rather than just being the player who's like, I have this cool idea and I think it'll be fabulous and I want it to be this. Okay, fine. I'll have this and I'll get this later. Me. Right? It's being on the other side of that conversation. But again, it's just communication. I'm just going to keep on saying it. Use your word hole. Yeah. My next note in the turn order is safety tools. I've already mentioned it, but seriously, get thee some safety tools. It lets us communicate with people, and it just, I don't know, like we've never had, at least as far as I'm aware, had anyone be like mad that someone used a pause card or a stop card. It's always like, oh, okay, great, awesome, let's talk about this. Okay, that's what you need. Thumbs up, no problem. It's also something that we use a ton. If someone's like, oh shit, I gotta step away for 5 minutes because I got a phone call, or oh no, I need to leave. So it's like, character walks out of the room and everyone just gives like a green card. They're all like, that's fine. We're not going to get mad at your character, even though this is like an awkward point in the conversation for them to have left. Real life comes first. Go for it. Thumbs up. Ooh, cheeky. See. Oh my. Socially distant word hole space sharing. Hi. We used a pause card in L5R. Oh, L5R is so cool. I hope it worked well, Kung Fu Fenris. I would love to share your story if you want to share that story. I love hearing about success stories when it comes to using safety tools because, communication, if you can make things better, instead of just feeling awful and being like, well, no one else at the table cares that they're torturing people, so I guess I'm just going to sit here, disengage. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, exactly. Scott did that in a recent episode of Exalt Witch Academy, in which he held up a yellow card before he did something that definitely could have been, upsetting. I really, really appreciated that. To have that foresight is really stellar. We don't always have that foresight, and that's kind of the great thing about everyone at the table having safety tools, is that someone thinks like, oh, I'm about to do this kind of awful thing. Is everyone okay with it? I mean, this sucks, but yeah, go for it. It's going to be a rough scene, but yes, I'm here for it. Awesome. Or someone can be like, no, I really wouldn't be okay with that. So then you can take 5 minutes and you can talk through what you can do instead to still have everyone at the table feel comfortable. But it's also the same thing. If someone doesn't have that foresight, they're just like, oh my God, I guess I'm going to do this. And, you're in your head. You're playing your game. You don't live your life with safety tools. You don't always think to use them beforehand. Someone else can be like, hold on, pause. I need to talk about this, or even stop. This is no good. We need to chat, redirect, figure it out. It's just nice to have that, that ability to really assure that you can do dramatic things without actually hurting the players. Because your character can be sad, but if the player is also sad in a way that isn't, fun roleplay, then that's not good. games should be fun, right? Yeah, like that's also the thing, is that figuring out how to find the fun while still being the like rules person or in charge of things is great, because it turns out that all these people that we've had as viewers that have been great as viewers for all these years turn out to also be really fucking good role players. Like, blown away. We had no expectations. We kind of were like, oh yeah, whatever, they'll be okay. Meh. So good. I'm so pumped. I have so much fun reading the channels. We get to read everything because we're storytellers, which is really nice because they're private chats, people texting each other. No one else can see except for us. So it's nice to have, that's like a perk as a storyteller, is that you know everything. But it's that totally lost my train of thought. Yeah, if someone out there remembers what I was starting. I know what you did last scene. Yeah, I don't know. There was something. Quality of role-playing. Quality of role-playing. Thank you. Y'all are great. You are awesome. 10 points to everyone. We have, we, the Storyteller team, have seen each other a lot in the last few weeks. Liz has been filming, so she's been in town a lot more often. We've had a lot more hangouts. And a huge percentage of our hangouts is talking about the game. And it's not work talk. It's not like, oh, well, this character wants to roll this, so I guess we're going to have to do this. Or like, I guess we have to figure out this ruling on this specific thing. Like, it's not work. It's fun. We're like, oh my god, did you see that scene with this and that? Oh my god, what do you think about this plot thing that's happening? And what about this relationship? And oh my god, this thing's great. Or terrible. Or awful. Or whatever. But like in an excited way. It's like, oh, this is tough, but good tough. That's what you want from a roleplay experience. You want to be able to have things feel... You want there to be difficulty, because if you always win, it's kind of like, why bother? But you want it to be rewarding in its difficulty. And we've all been saying how absolutely surprised we've been by the quality of roleplay going on, and it just keeps getting better. More people come in, more twists and turns and depths, and it's just this weaving tapestry of cool. So, go you. Get these some cool players. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, those are like my big things. I mean, my basics are roll with it. Just, if something happens, you've got to figure out how to react. Take it in, acknowledge, and react. Saturday was one of Gilly Good's top 3 roleplay moments of all time. Yeah. It was, so Saturday was set to be, initially it was just a festival. One of the players was like, oh man, we've got this theater, we've got these people that play music, why don't we like throw up a stage outside to like play some music and raise a few dollars, either for the theater or like as a charity fundraiser to get good PR. Then people fucking ran with it. It turned into an all-day festival in the big-ass park across the street. They had PR campaigns. They had, like, a whole set list. People picked songs, wrote out their, like, performances. All of that was happening on. And then there was a whole magic layer on top of that to, like, do crazy magic to save the story. And then, on top of all of that, which was already going to be a full gosh darn day, we had a player go rogue. We knew this meta plot was like hanging. It was potentially going to happen. We were constantly in check with this player. We were like green cards all around, but it happened to blow up at the same time, which just added another layer on top of this already intense day. And unfortunately, it meant that a lot of Europeans were up till like 4 a.m. We don't want to do that to our players. We want to let them sleep, but it's so rewarding when to see that group collaboration of taking an idea and building and building and building and building until you've got this amazing experience. And it's really nice that people out here are, saying that they had a great time, because I mean, that's what I love in life. That's a big part of why I work in theater, is that collective creation, is that taking an initial idea and continuing to build and build and build and build until you've got this huge snowball of a show or a story or whatever. So it's just nice when collaboration happens. Yeah. Yeah, and then after all of that, emotional and mental exhaustion, went off and did a marathon of holiday stuff. So it was a long weekend, but it was good. It was fun. It was rewarding. And that's something to look for, is make sure that you are enjoying it. Because once in a blue moon, there's something that isn't working, and there are ways to steer gently or nudge, push things in a way that's going to keep you as the storyteller or the storyteller team engaged. Because if you disconnect, it's over. Like, you can, Coliseum thing, like, okay, cool, whatever, I'm a rock monster, I smash you, meh. Cool, next, meh. I mean, okay, even then, it's probably going to be less fun. But if you're playing a game with a story, with a plot, with people who care about their characters, you've got to be engaged. And, it's not fair to say that it's only the storyteller that matters, but, if you aren't there, there's no game. So you've got to make sure that as much as you give players agency, you listen to their ideas, you roll with their ideas, you feed their ideas and fuel them, you make sure that that doesn't get away from you to a point where it's no longer fun for you. And there really hasn't been much at all that's been a concern. I mean, it's been, 45 days, something like that. Figure out whoever has the most XP and multiply by 2. But it's still, there's just little things that you can nudge a little bit this way or that, to make sure that it's also the story that you want to be telling, and the story that you want to be engaging with. And a big principle also, just for yourself and for everyone at the table, is the improv idea of yes and, where if someone comes up with an idea and they're like, oh yeah, I want to have a concert. Someone's like, yeah, a concert that's a charity fundraiser to give us good PR. Okay, a concert that's a charity fundraiser for PR, but also we're going to do a big ad campaign. Okay, yeah, but also it's going to be the launch after our repairs. Okay, well, we've got to get the repairs done. Like, boom, 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 right? Like, it's that yes and, rather than, I want to do a concert. Okay, I want to do a concert and fundraiser. No, that's dumb. Let's just do a concert. I mean, you have a concert. That's still cool. But letting things grow is so important. And also, it shouldn't ever be at the expense of your own well-being, and that's the whole safety card thing, right? Someone's like, yes, and we should all be naked. Yellow card, no. That's, illegal. That'll cause, ramifications that are bad. Okay. Or, no, that makes me uncomfortable. Whatever the reason is, you're still welcome to... Yes and doesn't mean always yes, but it does mean if you can take an idea, acknowledge it, accept it, and figure out how to add on to it, that's how you end up with the big things. Those big, glorious events, The final boss fight, right? Those types of things, or even the end of the story or the end of the chapter, those big moments that really stand out. And those grow from using the general principle of yes and. I'm gonna throw this up because why not? But quick look behind the scenes from me. Gaul's map was improvised midway between him entering back into the freehold and the announcement he made that it works. Still not sure what all of it means. That's another thing, is that even within your own ideas, you can yes and. You can be like, okay, I'm doing a weird map. A weird map that's in 3 languages, 6 languages, 24 languages in multiple colors. You just roll with your own idea, and as long as other people continue to at least partially engage with it, keep yes-anding yourself. Why the heck not? I don't think we've officially announced it in server, but that the end of the concert kind of counts as the end of the first story, capital S, in the game. It was a big goal. It was an accomplished goal. Things happen. There's a bit of a lull, which means that any once per story ability should reset, stuff like that. We haven't announced that. 5-person pornographic sketch, yes. But building up to those big things also gives you an easy place to do those story resets. It's a great time to have people level up, even like, fuck the system. The system's like they should have 28 more experience. Just give it to them. Give them that level up at the end of the big event. Like, let them have it. We're not going to start throwing extra XP at people, but we can do things like story resets. We can be like, you went into your legacy, you can regain some willpower. There are big things that can happen with those ideas, especially when you keep yes-anding, that let you go to those heights that also have crunchy ramifications. Yeah. And yeah, the other thing is, other than rolling with it, yes-anding, is being transparent. Being clear about why you're making decisions. Being clear when you're like, I don't actually know, I'm going to go look this up. Like earlier today, Crosshair was like, so it's this rule to like make the statue store glamour. I'm like, what? You don't have Fate Fire 5. Like, what are you doing? He was like, no, Infusion. I was like, Infusion? That's in a different book. I forgot about it. You're right, I'm wrong. Okay, here's your roll. Done. But like, just be clear about it. Because like, I could have just been like, no, you can't do that. And then, you know, he would have been like, what the fuck just happened? And I would have been like, why the fuck was he trying? No. You talk to people like, sorry, spoilers. I'm talking about someone who isn't even here. But I think it's okay. But yeah, like if you give additional information as to why you're saying something, that's how you get to solutions. Because I could easily have been like, that's not a thing you can do mechanically. You can't. And then, you know, it might not have actually gotten resolved to the fact that he actually could, and I just forgot about something. And it just, that's good in life in general. If you can communicate with people about why you're making decisions, especially if the decision is no, it helps people understand rather than just forming a wall and being like, I'm in charge. I make the rules. Too bad. You do that with like your shitty teenager who's making terrible life choices. You say, no, you can't be out until 5 a.m. before you have a test before exam week, doing all kinds of drugs and blowing your brains out. Like, no, you can't. We don't need to talk about this. The answer is no. That's when you just say no. Meh. Parenting advice with Kate. Ma. No. But whenever you can, just sit down and talk it through. But I'm not tired. Folks, question, thoughts, experiences with having told stories? What? Having run games for the first time. I'm just gonna turn on our cooling because it's still 20 degrees in October, which is not normal here at all, 20 Celsius. So I'm just gonna turn that back on because it's off. And I don't like it because it's hot. Technology, done. Tell your players to go easy on you? What? So, I'm gonna throw this up. Look, Ellie's said something nice, so I'm gonna put it on the screen for me. But you're like how much you talk to us in private channels, even in high intensity situations. It makes communication so much easier. This is another one of our brilliant brainwaves, is having private channels for each character, because this is a mass game. You can't just be like, hey Fred, what are you trying to roll? Pass me like a piece of paper. There's like 25, maybe even 30 sanctioned characters at this point. And so this is a way for us to be like, cool, you're getting some secret information. Here it is in a place that no one else can see. Or, you whisper to a character so only they hear it. Or it's like, hey, I've noticed that your character seems to be trying X. This would lead to Y. Are you okay with that? Yeah, Kung Fu Fenris. It's a lot of channels. We're honestly getting to the point where we may break down private channels into like A to M, and then like N to Z or whatever sort of dealio. Just so that like it's because of collapsible categories, at least it makes it manageable, and because if you collapse it, only ones with new messages like pops out. I thought it was 500 Kung Fu Fenris. If it's 200, we are effed. We are super effed. But yeah, private channels, or if you're at a tabletop game, just being able to like pass notes or text people, or generally you are running 24/7. So checking in between games with people, being able to talk to people, things like that is it's just so useful, as Alispot says. Like, you know, we're in a high intensity situation, like with Saturday when we had the player going rogue. We were able to like, we have our little like down towards the channel, I guess it would be that one, but it's like points in the direction that it shows up in Discord, points to the direction of where their private channel would be, and it's our little way of saying like, check your private channel. And some players use it for us when they're about to send us something there, just to make sure that we need to go check. And it's just a little check-in. It's just like, oh hey, here's a bit of information, or here's a clarification or a question. Just gonna frame that, put that on my CV, you know, Kate, usually right. And having that line of communication with your players on an individual basis is also really useful, especially if there's ever a situation between two that don't get along. If they know they can always like send you an email or message you on Discord or whatever your situation is in which you communicate with your players regularly, send you a text, whatever, call you on Thursday at 3 p.m. It just means that you can have that open line of communication. You can make sure that they're doing okay, that they're having fun. It's a way to remind you to like pay attention to this meta thing they're doing. They're like, oh yeah, well I'm building this, you know, necklace. And we're like, okay, that's going to take 10 accumulated rolls every day. Or like 10 accumulated rolls. We'll tell you when to do the next one. It's been like 2 weeks. Oh shit, we totally forgot. Yeah, do 3 rolls now. Right? It's a way to make sure that the players are getting what they need, that they can keep communicating. It's communication. That's just cancel the stream. Talk to each other. The end. But really, it's finding those ways of facilitating that communication, keeping those channels open. Literally, in our case, Discord channels, where it's one-on-one. There's no one else. It's just storytellers and the player. That's it. It's just talk to people. Talk. I think we are probably crazy for having private channel, like also letting people have like private one-on-one chats, because with 500 channels and the exponential, you know, A to B to C, like that's already 3 channels, and then you just keep adding and it keeps growing, and it's gonna be bad. So that's another thing, is figuring out communication management, but you don't need to do that unless you're crazy and doing a mass game. Second server just for texting, right? Yeah, but too much work. I guess it doesn't give XP, but then we want safety tools. Buh. That's true. There's the nature of communication. It's not just the fact of it. And it is about playing that balance. It's not just being the parent who's like, oh, you can't do this, or okay, fine, you can do that. It's figuring out that you can please use it, Kung Fu Fenris. If you want to do stuff, you do stuff. We like, you know, if we forget about you, just remind us, because there are a lot of you, but please use it. Yeah, it's that communication, and it's something that I specifically learned through my line of work with stage management. Is I'm in this room full of artists with all their ideas, but I also know what our limitations are. I'm aware I don't often have budgets, but I at least know I have a sense of the capabilities of the design team. And if someone's like, wow, I've decided that we desperately need this really expensive, difficult, complicated thing, I can be like, okay, this may not work. Let me talk to them and then facilitate that conversation. And it's a lot of negotiating people with big ideas and figuring out how to channel them into what we're capable of doing. And how to communicate that effectively in a way that is precise and clear, but also compassionate, right? I completely understand this great idea. I recognize that it is great. I recognize that it could be great. Let's figure out how to make it real within our abilities. And it's also, we make jokes, and that's part of it. We do try to keep the feeling light. We try to throw in jokes once in a while just to make sure that it isn't just, oh, well, I'm talking to a storyteller, so this is facts, and we're just talking about information. Boop, 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 boring, boring. No, we throw jokes, and especially, the fun part about Discord is that you've got reactions, right? So you can throw up, a half-second emoji, or winky face, or whatever, right? So it's a way for us to keep that level of, friendly communication going, even while you're dealing with okay, well, you're just, rolling these extended rolls to get some information. I love that botch. That, in addition to Requiem not being able to look at milk, my character then botched and has decided that, this character, is lactose intolerant or something. It was why does this character not like milk? Botch. They hate it. They never want to even hear about it. Okay. Just take away all the milk. How about some oat milk? Nope. Okay. Nothing milk-like. Or the botch in which Gilgud thinks that my character is poisoning people. Are they? We've also, that's a tip, I guess, tips and tricks, is that with botches, in systems that have botches, which is largely World of Darkness, but in D&D, you roll a 1. It doesn't mean you fall and you stab yourself in the face if you're the world's best sword fighter. It means that, your stab gets deflected, and maybe you drop your weapon, or maybe it's that your stab gets deflected, but you twist your ankle, or it's that your stab gets deflected, and, over there, that, random guard that wasn't looking turns around and notices you. Finding ways to keep them interesting without punishing people because of a die roll is really important. So, I remember once someone rolled a 1 on something, and the GM was like, okay, well, you're going to miss, and I'm going to roll a D100, and on a 99, it's going to hit that person in the tree. They rolled the 99. I got shot by my friend. It was hilarious. So you've got to find ways that, specifically in systems with dice rolling, one bad roll, okay, but many bad rolls, or a particularly bad roll at a particularly important moment, you've got to find ways to not take away the characters being who they are, right? Someone who, always can put together a model kit, right? They always do it right, and then they botch for some reason. They haven't forgotten how to put together a model. They just, their super glue went bad, so they can't glue it together today, right? It's something that doesn't ruin the character for that sake. And on another side of the botch discussion is when it comes to information, don't always make a botch mean that you get it wrong. Because then oh, well, she hates you when you botch means she loves you, right? Because then it doesn't have that mystery. So sometimes we just tell the truth. Sometimes we do 2 truths and a lie. Sometimes it's just a lie. Sometimes it's oh, well, you fail, but there's also another consequence that exists. With putting up the hammocks. I was hoping someone would botch. They did. Eventually, when someone was lying in a hammock, it collapsed. They shredded the hammock to pieces. It was hilarious. John wrote scripts about this poor hammock's history. It was amazing. So allow there to be failure, but also make sure that failure doesn't ruin someone's fun. especially when it's out of their hands like a die roll, doesn't mean that their character suddenly sucks when they should never suck. All right, we got a question. Small question I did have actually for when it fits best. What it was like to reveal a secret about one of your NPCs via another NPC to a PC, and especially Gaul. Can you be a bit more specific about that? So for anyone who isn't in the server, Gaul is a character who is house elemented, who loves secrets and wants secrets, and who also he's also Pandora legacy, which means that he tells everything, like he doesn't keep secrets. So it's this wonderful bit of chaos in which he absorbs everything, then spits it back out, and it's wonderful drama. His character is the most talked about, but not in like he's the best guy kind of way. People are pissed with this shit. Thankfully, Gilligan, the player, has been positive about this situation, is aware of it. That's like someone was asking, like, what's the thing you see on a character sheet? And I didn't clock into that right away, but if that was written down in a character sheet in a way that I understood it, I guess I'd have to ask some questions to make sure that it was going to be fun, which this realization is, versus terrible, which could be if someone played it badly. So yeah, in terms of the botch about like poisoning people, she's not poisoning people. Sorry, spoilers. But sometimes we will do something like, oh yeah, here's a fact. Nope, not sure how to answer that usefully. Oh, House Darren, that wasn't a secret. That was never meant to be a secret. Ever. It's in her profile, and she's just not been around enough for it to come up. I think she introduced herself as Tienza Abderan when she first met Revel in like the first hour of the server. But like she hasn't been around, but she's also in a commoner freehold where the freeholder doesn't use people's titles in the freehold. And her being a House Duran, she really cares about the rules of welcoming. And since she's in this freehold that cares about it, that like she has decided that the freeholder's rules are law here, and so she wants to uphold them and make that the law. Because to her, that's enforcing the rules of hospitality. This is a commoner freehold. It is crawling with title she. We aren't going to spend our days bending over and kissing their hands every time they walk in. That's not what this freehold should be. So I'm going to enforce those rules. But she's only a squire. And, like, you know, here's some meta plot. She squired, like, 15 years ago and never crawled up the tree, so it's more, you know, she believes in the ideals and she's affiliated with them, but she isn't like their head honcho going out and leading the rules of the house. Revel's baby. Arts and crafts is another example of yes, and Puka, for those who don't know, Changeling Puka are, their flaw is that when they're asked a direct question, they cannot answer truthfully. They can deflect, they can distract, they can just lie, they can make up stories. A lot of the time they make up stories, and one of them was that there was a kerfuffle at an arts and crafts night with the Count, and suddenly arts and crafts Thursdays became a thing. And now they're so popular that we had, I think, 10 players in out of, like, that was basically half of our active server. Everyone that was awake at that time, except for myself and one player, were at arts and crafts. And it only came up because of a Puka lie, which John ran with as Zeron and Ellie Spot ran with as Nora, and it became real, and other people wanted it to be real, so it kept going forward. Yeah, and like who the heck knows? Lots of people show up and they don't have crafts. You can read the server. I don't know, all kinds of crazy stuff happens at Arts and Crafts. The first time there was some botches. I think it was just to see how well they did at their painting or something, and there were some botches, and so the tables got all knocked over. And the count and countess were just too perfect. They're like, oh dear, that's okay. No worries. Things are like destroyed. They're covered in paint, but in like a beautiful way because they're she. And then today, I mean, people were arts and crafting. All kinds of discussions were going on. There were tons of people there, and then eventually Gift of Pan happened, and then some people did some stuff. But I don't know. One of the players can better describe it. Whatever was particularly good about today. But yeah, and that's something I'm learning. Sometimes things that I think people know, they don't. Or the opposite with Mina being Bomain. It was only Crosshair had put it in the exclamation mark profile that people can pull up. That was the only place it was ever mentioned. It was never mentioned in character, even in a private conversation. But somehow it stuck in the corner of Lo's brain. And so at some point, Harvey was like, oh yeah, Mina at Bomain. And so he was talking to Patches and Claude at the time. They were both like, what the fuck do you mean? Went into emergency mode. And then we're like, wait, what the heck? So we deleted that. So anyone that wasn't like on the server at the time didn't necessarily see that exchange. But it was supposed to be a secret that she was keeping, and it accidentally got out. Thankfully, everyone involved totally understood what happened, right? Crosshair put the information out there. Someone else kept it in the back of their brain, and, a month later, they forgot how they knew it. Ellie Spot, you are right. Yep. That's true. That was another thing. Gonna say, if you're using a Discord server, use the rules for things like pronouns, especially. I find it amazing. It's so useful, especially that we have so many people in the server, particularly when they're new. I'm like, your name is like, fucking Ellie Spot. Let's go with Ellie Spot because you're the most recent chatter, right? Like, I don't fucking know what gender that is. It's just a word that means nothing to me. I can click on the name, their pronouns are there. Like, less likely to fuck it up. Yeah. Thanks, Ellie Spot. That makes sense. I don't think any of the STs remembered that was a thing that we had done. Cool. But yeah, G-She Squad. Yeah, so that's the thing, that if you have a Discord server, please use rules. They're so useful. No. Yeah. Good evening. How you doing? Any question? How does the non-face-to-face aspect alter the feeling as an ST? I ain't clubbing with no she. So I, on a very, very minor scale, have a little bit of aphasia, which is like where I get the wrong words. I just can't fucking remember the word. It's like pretty small, but it's more than the average person who occasionally forgets a word. And so having that like extra minute to sit down or to like open a tab and go find the word I'm looking for is useful. Being able to edit what I wrote because I realized that sentence makes no sense. Really useful on that sense. So from like an accessibility scale, it also gives that accessibility for anyone that can have a screen reader or doesn't have hearing or reduced hearing, right? It's text-based. So there's some accessibility perks. There's some accessibility flaws. I think there are mods to Discord to make it more dyslexic friendly. You can change the font size. You can change whether it's light background or dark background. So there are some features that do have advantages on that side. But as far as the feeling of playing that game, I think it makes it easier to have all those little side conversations. We can like be having 6 conversations at once because we aren't sitting in a room talking. or we don't have to have one storyteller per room because it's a LARP or something. We're able to go back and verify things like the Beaumain reveal that shouldn't have happened, because we just control F Beaumain and it had only ever come up as a profile selection. So it's quite useful in that it lets us link back to things, it lets us pin posts, so we have perfect notes on everything, which, at some point is going to piss us off because we, as the entire storyteller team, forgot about something, made a meta decision, and then someone comes back and says, well, actually, you said this 6 weeks ago. And that's totally fine for the player to do that. It's totally fine. It just will suck at some point. It'll happen, and we'll be like, fuck. We made a mistake, now we're going to have to deal with it. So I think there's a lot of useful aspects to that. People don't have to take notes, right? They don't have to, there are lots of benefits to it. The rules, I coded a dice bot, so you type in the command. I know that, it's a little clunky for people at first, but it lets you, it helps us, right? We can find someone's rule. We have everyone's rule show up. We can look at it. And we can also go back to things, especially like extended roles. It's like, oh, well, it's in your private channel. So I just scroll back and okay, 3 + 2 + fail + 6. Great. You've hit the threshold. You don't have to have a bunch of notes. Sleep well. Expect a text from Dicentra in the morning. That's something that I might get into now that he's leaving. Storytelling, being in a relationship with a player, that's fucking new. Requiem, I'm gonna pull your thing up. Boop. I will say that I appreciate the personal lines and veils being posted for each character. I remember stepping into a room and right away the pause card came up and a player said, hey, we're talking about something that might approach your veil. We talked it out and all worked out well, but it actually made me feel appreciated in that moment. That's something that Liz brought up initially, was how do we include them in a way that everyone can access them. And she sort of had one thought, and then we had another thought. I think it was roles or something. There were a few thoughts that came up. And eventually what we ended up with, I think, works relatively well. That folks put their lines and veils in with their character profile so that when you first meet a character, it's there. Or if you're ever uncertain, you can always look it up. Thank you for the follow, Star Knight 40. And me personally, with the players, is what I've done is that in Discord you can type a note that's your personal note for that person. It does persist across all of Discord, but since I'm only in this one Discord game, it's great. I've literally typed in everyone's lines and veils into their notes for me. So it's a way for me, particularly as a storyteller, to be able to check in when I'm oh, I remember someone had this line or veil. I can click on the people in the room and be okay, well, I can probably talk about this. I'll still be careful because I know that people read all the channels, but I don't necessarily have to. Yeah, it allows that negotiation, allows that ability to check in, because telling just the storyteller your lines or veils, sometimes you're not comfortable talking to the room about it. That's fine. But that's also part of our session 0. It's helping you phrase it in a concise way. Thank you. Thank you for the bits. But we feel like it's important. I don't think we have anyone that has a private line or veil that they've told us. If they have, I've forgotten that this is a thing. And it just helps us be sure that, play can continue. And if someone forgets, no one's going to be you asshole, you forgot my line or my veil in a server of 30 characters. No, it's just, hey, yellow card, by the way, this is a line for me. Could you not describe this? Could you delete that? Or I need to leave the room. I'm gone. And no punishment in game for that character suddenly disappearing, no matter what's happening. In the middle of confessing love, a line has been crossed. Woof! Oh well, you'll confess love another day, I guess. it's really, yeah, and it's nice. It's nice because it's an editable thing, so that as the game goes on and you realize something like I had happen a couple of days ago, I realized that like my mental health is not in a place where I'm okay processing someone else's mental health breakdown. Like I'm just not there personally. So I was like, okay, I went through as a storyteller. I have like 5 profiles, and I went through and I edited it into all of my profiles. But we also talked about it as a storyteller team, to realize that we're storytellers. We have to read everything. We have to be able to adjudicate everything. Our lines and veils need to be server lines and veils. And also that people are coming here to play a game, not to become mental health first responders. It's the same thing that if someone in game was like, I have an open wound, you need to describe word for word how to suture up this wound. Like, no one's here to be a surgeon. So that's something that we adjusted because we didn't, we had to sort of figure out how to process that in a way that was safe for everyone and still good for everyone. And like the players were okay with it too. Like everyone was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. We'll find ways to like, because you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to have emotions. You aren't like putting a ban on emotions. We just want to make sure that, there are all kinds of design decisions we've made. Like the fact that you can't have a chimera that acts on its own. You can have like a chimerical dagger. Great. But like you can't have a chimerical dagger that like walks around and talks to people, because then you're playing 2 characters. There are design decisions that we have to make based on the scale of the game and based on the entire experience, so that folks can be safe and have fun, and not so that everyone's on an even playing field, and that people's safety is being respected and understood, and that it's fun. Like, there are all kinds of design decisions that you make as a storyteller. Yeah. And that's the thing, that's the thing. There are conversations that might happen, like there will, I guess, I'm going to say hopefully, which sounds a little harsh, but hopefully there will be a relationship that goes nuclear. It just completely falls apart. It's dramatic, it's drastic, and there may very well be a few players that are like, whoa, this is too much for me, and we may be able to move that breakup discussion into a private channel, or we may need to temper that in a way that doesn't feel too real for people. Because we've all been there, we've all gone through it. We've had a character death. That, so far, no one's raised a card specifically about it. But we're negotiating it, and it's something that we are keeping very close eyes on, because we don't want to make the players go through the mourning. We want them to explore how their character would react to it, but we don't want someone to be sitting at home wrecked, just emotionally distraught, tearing their hair out, freaking out, or however they may react to it, right? That's not fun. That's not good. If they're like feeling, they've got the feels, they're kind of sad, awesome, thumbs up. It's good to be engaged with the story, but we don't want the players to go to those emotional places that are dangerous. We want them to be able to have that layer of separation. And so there are just sometimes they'll go nuclear. They'll go nuclear. But there are sometimes those situations that you need to figure out how to engage with or not engage with in such a way that keeps safe for everyone. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that at least you only swore for a year and a day. If you had been like, we're together forever after having known each other for like 2 weeks, it was like, no, you're like, breaking an oath is really bad. It's gonna really suck. Don't do it. But we would have stepped in as storytellers. Like, I made sure it's like, no, you can't just do this on a whim. You have to go home and read about it and think about it and come back. And it took like another week or something before they actually swore the oath. That was another thing that was sort of a decision that I made in the moment as a storyteller, because I think it was the middle of the night. I was awake because my brain hates me. And, I opened the server and I saw a bunch of people talking about, like, we're going to form a motley. We're going to swear some oaths. Where are the oath pages? What's an oath? I was like, this is big shit. If you screw this up, you have permanent repercussions. You are an oath breaker, capital O, capital B. It sticks with you forever. It is bad. It hurts. There's, like, crunchy ramifications. Don't just jump into this because, someone suggested it and you decide you should go along with it. And that's sometimes something you have to do as a storyteller, is like pull people back from the brink of doing something really dangerous and real stupid. Or like give them a little nudge, because it'll be a good story because they're on the brink of something dangerous and stupid. That's also part of it. It's that push-pull, that guidance, that trying to be aware of what will be fun. Not just dramatic, not just, like, difficult, but fun. Sometimes dramatic and difficult is fun, but sometimes it's just like, this is cool, but not today. I need to take your ball away from you. You might have a little fit. You'll get your ball tomorrow when you've learned how to not, like, break the neighbor's windows. Parenting with Kate. That's what today's session is all about. Speaking of pulling and pushing. Hydration. I solemnly swear to break this oath. Relationships. I know we just did 2 weeks worth of RPGClinic After Dark about sex and relationship in RPGs, but as a first-time storyteller, this is the first time for me to be foraying into it. We talked last week about player-player romance for the first time, as opposed to like player NPC that we've had lots of over the years. So for me now to be the ST, to be the person of power in this, like, I'm aware of that as like a fact of the game, that I have the power. Like, I could just say, oh, well, your character is mean to my NPC, so you're out of the game. Like, I could do that if I was a shitty person. Thankfully, most of us are, like, at least well into our 20s, if not 30s, if not 40s. So we've gotten past, we've had enough life experience and emotional maturity to deal with relationships and separating, like, our characters having a fight and us having a fight. So I don't think that we're at any risk of people being like, you were mean to my character, so I'm going to squish your character. But I do have that responsibility. I do have the ability to, like, meta plot affect this character. So it's being aware of that power that I have while also wanting to squish. That wanting to make sure that the players' interests and goals are being met, but also I'm not going to completely change my character to meet this players. Like, we joked the other day, like, what if you had to make a character to specifically meet a PC? Then, okay, yeah, someone has made their life's quest to find true love and it's not happening with any of the PCs. Maybe then we'll make a custom NPC for them. Probably not. But finding ways to yes and a player's relationship situation is also a whole other aspect. It's like a specific thing. There's vulnerability involved. There's discussion involved. That's another reason why I love our safety tools and our private channels and our, ability to talk out of character and in character about the situation. And in this particular case, I'm the storyteller trying to let the player lead, but the player is the character with more experience than my NPC. So the PC is giving the NPC the lead, but the ST is trying to give the player the lead. So that's been a particularly interesting dance, and I think it's worked out well. Occasionally there's just a little like, oh, hey, not this, please, or like, oh, this is working. But ultimately, I'm still making decisions as the storyteller. I will not suddenly make my character my NPC, do a 180-degree turn. But when it comes to making decisions, like how would they react to this, I do factor in what would be best for the individual player that's in this relationship, but also the story overall. But also, thankfully, I feel like by this point, there's enough trust that if I made a decision that wasn't like ideal for the character, there would be the understanding that it wasn't me, Kate, being mean to them, the player. But it's certainly a dynamic, and it's certainly something to dance with, particularly if it's the first time you're dealing with it and handling it. It's important to be aware of, where you have that extra control and when you should exercise it for the sake of story. Because, if I was just another PC, like, I'd just do whatever the heck my character did, regardless of whether it was good for plot or whether it was ideal for the other player. I try to make sure that my challenges are interesting, that there's room for growth through them, rather than just being like, no, don't wanna, or, yeah, sure, let's do this. So that's like a very specific zoom in to one relationship with one player in this mass game with many NPCs and PCs. But it's sort of a way to zoom into the realities of being a storyteller, and the intricacies of negotiating the difference between what that dynamic is in as two characters, two players at a table, or you being the player and someone else being the ST, versus you being the ST and them being a player, and how you have to have other considerations in mind and potential other priorities and other decisions. Because ideally you're making decisions that will be best for the game and the players in it, as long as you aren't sacrificing your own fun. It's been interesting watching player-player relationships form, and the variations of that has been fun. We have a server. You missed a little bit of it, Liz. You did. I didn't necessarily talk about the sexy times, but I talked about the relationship fact. Yeah, I mean, this particular case, this is the NPC whose job is to find people who are alone. And part of that is that this is a character who ruffles a lot of feathers. So to find someone who can see what that character is trying to do, I felt was useful, at least for other people to read, even if they only had the meta knowledge of what this character was trying to do. But yeah. How much is too much time allocated? I mean, that's, I guess, a question for you out there. Do you feel like we're spending too much time role-playing through these in relationship scenes? Because honestly, if you do, let us know. You can let us know here. You can let us know in your private channel. You can yell with your friends about it. We'd prefer to know. Yeah, it's been fun also watching player-player relationships develop, and it's been really great to see the different, like, the spectrum of what that means. There's some that are quite close to monogamous, though that's even starting to shift for most of those pairings, all of those pairings. But at least, initially, very monogamous, very, I'm madly in love with you, we're going to be together forever, we're two of us against the world. Versus people that are just like, you're attractive, do you want to, like, spend half an hour in the garden together? Cool, that was fun, peace, like, and people that are very comfortable and easy with multiple partners versus characters that are exploring that possibility for the first time, characters that are very experienced with relationships and or sex, characters who have experience with one but not the other, characters who have no experience with either. So it's very fun to see all of that, and it's also just nice to know that either through my NPCs, I can help ease some of the rough edges that might be more player inexperience than character inexperience, or, confront just a character who's being shitty about something. But also as an ST, right, I can out of character discuss something directly in the channel with everyone seeing or privately on a channel. It really gives us that freedom to make sure, again, that it's a fun experience for everyone. But it is something that I'm aware of, that I'm watching, and that we chat about occasionally. Mostly it's the eating popcorn and like having fun about it. But it's still something that we can and do discuss. Is like, hey, do we think this is okay? What do you think? Like, we don't know this player outside of this game. Do we think that like they have the emotional maturity for this? Are they going to be okay? Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on it. Oh, it turns out they know what the fuck they're talking about. They're just playing an innocent character. Awesome, we can stop worrying about it. Cat. I feel that we're as much actors as audience on Disconcordia. I love reading things my characters have either no idea about or no interest in. That is something fun about the written text game and the way we have it set up, that anything that isn't a private conversation that is specifically outside of regular gameplay in the main areas, which we generally discourage because your private shit doesn't give you XP, other people can watch. So I've never felt like being ever interfered with other players. Okay, well that's good. Yeah, I love interruptions, and I mean that's part of John specifically. That's part of his wisdom through running. Like, he's run LARPs, he's run mass games before, not on Discord, but in general. And he's a writer. He has a really good sense of timing, what's dramatically interesting. He's a narrative designer, and like he has this experience. And that's part of what the layout of the Freehold is, and that's why we had that, design thread about the reason why there's the point of access is the foyer. You have to go through the front lobby to get anywhere else. It's to cause those player interactions because we want people to keep talking. It's why we were really hesitant initially about these private channels, because we were concerned that people would go off into these private channels and only talk to each other and never engage with the rest of the story. Thankfully, so far, that's been good, but there are still a few people that are like, I want to have my own private place where I can have 10 people over. And as much as we do that with Heartslight and the Spark and the Braided Pines, these are still areas that everyone has access to, because what we don't want is for like 3 players to go off and only ever play with each other. At that point, honestly, just make your own Discord server and talk with your 2 friends. Maybe make a different character that would interact more often. It comes up even on tabletop games when you've got like the lone wolf that's like too cool for school. It's like, okay, why are you with this party? Your character, clearly wants to do X when everyone else wants to do Y. You don't care about anyone else. You're only interested in your own goal. Your character goes off and chases those goals, and they have a great life. Make a new character that'll play with us. Private IKEA store, do on. Yeah, it's great with texting. Like, that totally makes sense. And it's just enough privacy that, like, people are like, oh, these 2 people are texting, but we have no idea what they're saying. It's interesting. It's the interesting amount of mystery, rather than these 2 characters we never see because they're always alone together somewhere and no one has any idea who they are or what they're doing. They just kind of show up and disappear. I don't care about this character. Yeet. We want to keep that interesting level. There was like a one-sided phone conversation that happened today, and people are curious, and that's what we want. We want it to be interesting for everyone at the table, not just the one person that's involved in this, or the 2 people that are involved in them. But like once in a blue moon, characters going on a date or something, that's okay. We're realizing that, okay, once in a while it's all right for these things to happen in private places, but we want to make sure to keep steering it to a place that engages everyone. Because that's the same thing in a tabletop game, right? Once in a blue moon, you might have a one-off session, one-on-one with a player, or maybe someone can't make it for a day, so you have a session slightly more focused on other characters. I've been in a couple of campaigns where, like, 3 times throughout hundreds of sessions or something, it was a day where everyone was, like, in another room, chatting, eating chips, hanging out, and one by one they cycled in to have a private session with just the storyteller. And those were like iconic sessions, and we had a couple of those in Changeling where our schedules worked out that we each had a private session. Those were great, and those are great moments, but you don't want the whole game to be that, because then it's not a group game. It's 2 or 3 people having that little conversation in a corner. So, that's another thing about storytelling, is not saying yes to everything. Because if we did, then we'd have like 60 private channels, and I think that we would have lost a few people to them. And not because they don't like the other characters, but because what they would be having in these private spots would be fulfilling them enough that they wouldn't feel the need to go elsewhere. Yeah, well, that's also it. It's something that I've been doing in my private channel with the player that my NPC is in a relationship with, is that most of the time we just sort of go over it broadly. We would generally do this and then that and then the other thing. This is kind of what happens. Here's like, okay, we break into the scene for like 4 text exchanges and then we break back out. Specifically because, A, there's like some respect for time zone differences, because I don't want to keep them up until 3 a.m. chatting with me, because it's the middle of the day for me. But it's also that this isn't group play, this isn't XP generating play. They could be spending this time interacting with the rest of the story and the rest of the characters. I don't want to keep anyone to myself. That feels unfair. And by doing that as the storyteller, when you have that situation, it helps set the tone for everyone else as well. That's another thing about being a storyteller. You lead by example. You are a leader by being a storyteller. And so if your interactions with other players... Thanks, Pook. I probably meant either that's just random, or I've forgotten it, or that's something from today. Either way. Thanks for that mental image. It's random. Okay, fair. But, yeah, you're setting the pace, you're setting the rules of engagement. I mean, we even do it just in how we type, right? We tend to write a couple of sentences. We don't do big, long paragraphs. Some folks are coming from forum play where they're used to that, where they still, like, they've spent 15 years doing block-sized posts. But because we want to make it so that people can interrupt and interject and react, and everyone's there and able to keep going, we try to lead by example. The way in which we do that, the way in which we describe when we roll dice, our use of the safety tools, right? If we keep using the safety tools and being proactive about it, it'll help remind everyone that they exist and that they can use it. And so you set the tone for the game, not just by coming up with a meta plot and like, okay, we're in, the far distant future and the sky's fallen. It can also be the subtle ways in which you engage, the way you give focus to someone who's talking, you listen to them. You nod in response, but you don't interject because this is clearly important to them at the moment. And then at other times, you just interject because there's drama to the interjection. You walk into a room when 2 people are macking it or getting down, because that is a reminder that there are other people in the building, and a moment of comedy for everyone, ideally. There are ways to set those tones and those permissions and that ability. And yeah, in a mass game like this, walking into a room, look, she finds people when they're alone, sometimes together. Yeah, it's sort of showing people things that they have permission to do, encouraging them to do some things, or discouraging it, and trying to lead by example. God, yeah. This is, like, I gotta say, I don't think we expected the server to be quite so horny. There's been a lot of sexual activity going on. I drew up a map yesterday of, like, who likes who or who has kissed who or whatever. It's a disaster. I'm here for it. Our server is a mature server. There's a warning you have to be 18 to play. In Discord, it says it's not safe for work. Player. Yes, we also accumulated quite a lot of XP in Changeling streaming, so I guess we did lead by example. But Brom was monogamous. My nose. Braun was monogamous. We weren't all boinking left, right, and center. He had a wife, and then another wife, and then another. Okay. That was like hinted at, and then it finally happened like 100 episodes in, though. I don't know what I past tensed. Sorry. Yeah, it's true. Finally. Kyoko opened up his hard, rocky exterior and found the fleshy material inside. You're right, he eventually opened that up, but initially he wasn't as... Hi, Scott. He had the fewest partners. How about that? Canonically. During the course of the game. He was less swingy. Meh. Yeah, you are. Yeah, he did. Wait. What? I mean, it's good pun. So we got about 15 minutes left. Do folks have any other questions, comments, concerns, ideas, whatever, when it comes to being new to storytelling? Thoughts, feelings, experiences. I personally am enjoying this. This is a ton of fun. I'd like to think that it'll make me feel more comfortable about potentially running a game elsewhere in the future, but imposter syndrome is still a thing, so we'll see. Ooh, question. Oh yeah, question. Gimme. Shoot. Aw, that's so cute. Are you gonna follow up with something terrible? Too bad, you suck. I am having a good day. I am. Yeah, I mean, I hung out on the server and I got confirmation of a job in November. It's the first contract since May. Second contract of the pandemic. So, yay! It also means that, like, I'm gonna have to write all my NPCs out for a couple of weeks because work, but, you know. Something that's turned... Okay, great. Aw, thank you, Scott. Get yourself a Scott. Scott's too good for this world. Go find one. Next character. Parsifal's amazing. I fucking love Parsifal. Don't make a next character. I just want more Parsifal in my life. Tell us something here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Thank you. It's really nice. Tell us something that has turned out to be more fun than you expected. Now I actually have to think of my answer. I mean, all of it. And everyone being as good as they are. I think the private channels. As, you know, as the game runner, knowing the, like, meta concerns for them, I was worried that they were going to become these places where people disappear to, or that they were going to just be like two people describing their sexual encounters in too much detail, and we'd keep having to come in and be like, we're reading this, please stop. And thankfully it hasn't been that, so that's a relief. But beyond it not sucking, it's actually awesome, especially text conversations between characters, to see these relationships furthering or developing or even shifting gears behind the scenes, and seeing how other players react to not knowing this or suspecting that these people are in conversation, or only getting one half of the conversation, and then seeing those reveals. And seeing, like, yeah, being an STE specifically, knowing everything. I mean, again, it's part of my job to like have be the center by which all the information filters in and filters out, or if I don't know something, I know who to ask. That's something that I enjoy, so it's nice to have that. But it's also really nice to be able to know the meta plot and to see where one player has decided to go because they've mentioned something in their private channel, and to be able to watch something unfold. Because even if you know where something's starting, you don't necessarily know where it's going to go. Like the fucking concert. Concert was good. Then the Unleashing idea, also good. The great heights to which it grew, I would not have known that. But I got to be the first to know that it was going to happen. So that's really fucking cool. It's really cool to watch something grow from the first little seed. And that is a privilege as a storyteller because you know the secrets. Sometimes it's because you're the one writing those secrets. Sometimes it's just because you're the person who gets told the secrets. So it's fun. It's really fun to see what everyone's coming up with, what everyone's doing, and where they're steering things or being led or exploring and discovering. It's also just nice to have so many like players. It's a lot. Sometimes it's bonkers. Having 10 people chatting away all live at all times, trying to like talk to each other. Like it can get really intense, but it's really cool also when we've got like 5 rooms and each one just has 2 people having like a quiet conversation in each of the 5 rooms. And it just turned out to be so fabulous. And that I've got all of these different people, like, right? I feel like any 5 of you or 4 of you or 3 of you could be a lot of fun to sit down and play a game with. But to have everyone just give so much content and so many aspects and so many moving parts, it's what a storyteller would kind of, in an ideal world, want to provide for players, is to have something that's that alive to interact with. It's what we as players have forced John into with our collection of NPCs. Like, holy shit. Doesn't matter. Like, Changeling, okay, we had a freehold that had these regulars, so he kind of set himself up for trouble. But with other games, we're traveling. Doesn't matter, we want this NPC, and another NPC, and another NPC. We're just throwing them all into our bag of holding. And yeah, ideally, if you really could, you could fill the player's world with all these different characters, right? So that they always have options of what they want to do, where they want to go, what stories they want to explore today. And by having this many players, it's made it really nice. Because it's only when there's like a big event that it gets a little bit much. But even so, most of the time we can split it off into smaller sections. Characters are getting really good at being like, hey, want to have this conversation in the office? Or the NPC that I play most often is very much like, this room's too crowded, I need to get out of here. And there are a couple of other players now that are starting to like sort of be like, whoa, this is too many people. It encourages people to not overwhelm, but also like, yeah, it's like the bell curve, and like you don't want to be at there or there. You want to be like in the middle where there's like a handful of people. Yeah, that's also it. With this many people, it means, there's 20 people coming up with ideas. So even if one person only has one idea a month, that's almost an idea a day just from the players. It's so good. Sophia. Yeah, well, that's something that Liz has said, is that, I'll let her respond herself if she's still here in chat, but that it's first off, it's an advancement in her character that sort of, she moved into that at the very end of our story, but also that being able to sit down and think about it, she can really, like, nail that hostess thing. But I'll let Liz answer for herself. Yeah, that's also it, is that there are, I'm going to put that up on Chit chat. Yes, he did. He did fill the spark with a million characters for every time we wanted a ball, and we were so mean, and he was so good. We do not deserve John. But yeah, as Requiem says, it's nice that there are so many niches filled by other players. It forces in a good way to branch out, to find what you need for a thing. Gives you more options of what you can do in the world. I know that sometimes even like a party of 3 or 4 or 5, you feel like, oh, well, this is the only, we don't have a healer, so I guess I have to be the healer, or, oh, there's already a healer, so I can't be a healer. Whereas I feel like we're at this interesting critical mass where you're never going to be completely unique. Like someone else is going to be probably as good at sword fighting as you, or someone else is going to be as good at crafting or talking to people as you. So it forces decisions that to make yourself unique beyond that. Whereas if we had like 100 or 200 players, then I feel like it might feel difficult, especially at character creation, to try to set yourself apart. Because right now I feel like I don't feel like there are 2 characters that are identical, like at all. At all. I may in game or out of game be like, oh, you 2 are so alike, specifically because I want to piss the 2 of them off, because no one wants to hear that. Yeah, like we have a ton of musicians, right? But that's actually great. And despite having a ton of musicians so far, most of them have their own instrument. Like, it's great. It's fab. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. And that's the thing, right? If you're at like a 4-person table, oh, well, we already have 1 musician. I guess it won't be a musician. Whereas when it's a 20-person table, great, we've got 5 musicians. Oh, yeah. Penance did create Zeron. Penance created Puke. It created Sizer. That was a fucking good session, or 2 sessions or whatever. Like, it sparked a lot of the first, some of the first, big NPC interactions. Yeah. Penance. How do I balance the fun of playing my PCs and NPC with responsibility being a storyteller? That was asked a little earlier, but I'll go over it. Is that as playing my former PC, or even like the NPCs that I've created for this game, I'm aware that they're there to help and guide as opposed to be the hero. I quietly had Dicentra cast Fatefire on the Freehold, separate from the Unleashings, so that it was a quiet way for us as storytellers to have a tool, and it was something she would want to do to help, but that wasn't game breaking, right? She didn't come in and bless Fatefire every single person that was going to be in the Freehold that day, right? Because it just sits on your character, Fatefire. It's fucking OP. So it's figuring out small things, small ways that the character can contribute in a way that they would without doing everything. Patches. She could have come in fixed up everything and chronosed and ledger domained and metamorphoses the fuck out of the Freehold. She didn't. There were meta plots reasons not to, but also as a storyteller, I was like, okay, she's going to wait until there are gaps that no one is going to fill. So she's going to come in, fill those gaps so that people stop stressing about how to fill them. And, she gets to be cool and useful. And the character's happy that she can help. Kate's happy that she can help. And everyone gets to keep doing the things that their characters excel at. Is it weird to be a storyteller alongside the storyteller who ran CTS? It's really useful because I can just be like, John, this is meta plot. I don't know. Meh. Someone's asking about the intricacies of their house history. You know this. Meh. How does this rule work? Tell me. Basically, you let me be lazy. I guess the only thing really that stands out is just that because you have these 30 NPCs that can potentially be drawn upon, I wish that I had the same bank of NPCs so that you aren't stuck playing 5 characters at once and I'm just over here being one because it's the only one that makes sense to be there at the moment. And kind of wishing people would interact with these other NPCs that I could then use more to take more weight off of John playing 5 characters. But that's not because of CTS specifically. It's just, I mean, John is fucking amazing. He can play 5 characters at once and run combat and. It's really cool. We do need a Zister appearance. We really do. What NPCs am I talking about in which context? Because John has Zoe, Spline, Edgewick at the Freehold. Then there's the rest of, there's Zeron that we're seeing a lot of, but there's also Kyoko and Incisor and Zister and Talus and Claude and, Kenwin and, like, whoever the fuck else has been in the game. Saley. We haven't seen Saley yet. Right? John has this bank of NPCs that some players who've watched CTS are, like, interested in drawing on. I don't remember. I don't think we murdered him. Duke, Laurel, Lenore. What are my NPCs? I have Dycentra, Tiensa, and Amunife. And then Patches at the moment. I'm trying to figure out what other, like, that's something I don't have experience in, is figuring out, what to make in an NPC that's useful or interesting. That's something that I'm still struggling with. And how to have, Chance's the Grump Pisky, who's the bar manager. Amunife is the Ishu fashion designer. That's very extra and very, like, I'm the best. I don't consult. I just create. I don't sew things. I don't make things. I design. I'm an ideas person. Like, I love them, but I also feel like they're so extra that I don't want to just have them. Yeah, kind of rival to Taylor. But Taylor actually makes shit. But I just feel like Amunife is so extra that if I bring them in, they're either going to dominate or they're going to be so dominating that no one's going to want to engage with them. So I'm, like, really figuring out when and how to bring them in. Jens is a bit too meh at times, I find. I feel like people are already talking to each other, so they don't need another ear. Or if they do, Dycentra is the better character to do that through because she doesn't have any sass to her. She's just like, oh, are you a white knight? I've never met a real white knight before. That was really cool how you stood up for someone without asking them whether or not they wanted to be stood up for. Wow. Like, Kate would be so fucking sassy. Tiensa, yeah, right? Well, she will be the bartender when there are shows. But Tiensa is like a living, breathing, person who's been a bartender for like 20 years. So she isn't going to put up with people's bullshit. And the thing is, people aren't really rowdy in the kind of way that you need like a no shit bartender for either. If people were constantly like getting into little scraps, that would have been useful. Are you a real white knight? I've never met one before. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, it is fun to be a Amunife in which I like draw fucking napkin sketches, Oh, look, Sophia. This is Amunife's, default outfit. Figuring out, pockets and stuff. A ball, the gala, at the gala. Like, that's fun. That's been super fun. But yeah, so I am at the moment trying to figure out some other NPCs to make that could be interesting and contribute to niches that need filling. As opposed to the niches I'm already filling. And on that note, but actually on that note, Yes. Will Cleo be better prepared to handle a Munife who's like, I'm not consulting. I'm just bringing you stuff. How fucking dare you buy things? Thank you, folks, for hanging out, engaging. It's been such a good experience as a first-time storyteller. Like, it's been awesome. You've all been really supportive and understanding when I am like, oh, I don't fucking remember this rule. Blah! Look it up. You know, you made the 2 hours zip by. Thanks for hanging out. Throughout the week. It is Thursday. Tomorrow there will be Punchy, usual Punchy time. I'm going to do a little schedule here, see if it works. Tomorrow there will be Punchy, usual Punchy time. Saturday there will be Drew Crew. I believe there will also be Doomed. And Sunday there is a Punchy Book Club. I believe that's 1 o'clock. And then we will be back here with Exalt Witch Academy, continuing our story. We just got off the ship. Shit's gonna happen, probably. Who knows? But until next time, friends, you know where to go. Up and to the right.